I'm Joe Parsons with a special election results report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. The 2025 Virginia gubernatorial election will go down as an historic day in the Commonwealth, as this election decided Virginia's first female governor. The candidates, Winsome Earl Sears and Abigail Spanberger, have similar views on quality education and removing Virginia's vehicle tax, but have vast contradictory opinions on many other topics, and one of those was cannabis reform. The Lieutenant Governor, Winsome Earl Sears, has shared in Governor Glenn Youngkin's view that except for a highly regulated medical market, cannabis for adult use is bad for Virginia and is nothing more than a dangerous gateway drug. She backed Youngkin on the vetoes of an adult use program that would have created thousands of new jobs, created tens of millions in new revenue, and would have helped keep cannabis behind a safe, regulated, and most importantly, an age-verified counter. Those vetoes including a parental rights bill that would have protected parents from losing custody or visitation for simple cannabis use, and the resentencing bill that would have allowed simple cannabis-only convictions to be reviewed and possibly overturned. Her opponent, Abigail Spanberger, has been open to opening the adult use market to bring much-needed revenue and jobs to the Commonwealth. She's also signaled support for both the parental rights bill and the resentencing bill. The election has been in the national spotlight and has drawn much controversy. Well, Election Day was yesterday, and we have a winner to announce. And the new governor of Virginia will be Abigail Spanberger. She held a decisive lead and was endorsed by former President Barack Obama, the NAACP, and even many conservatives. I would like to congratulate her in her victory and would like to send her an honest and heartfelt invitation to be open to discussions about the future of cannabis in Virginia. I also hope that she acts with haste to restore the will of the people and signs these bills into law. These bills will build a safe, regulated, and of course, behind an age-verified counter, and will help erode the dangerous legacy market that has kept the Commonwealth in the past. I also hope that she will continue to work with her partners across the aisles to keep this momentum going, because as I always say, it takes red and blue to equal green in the Commonwealth. The future of adult use, parental rights, and correcting the mistake on the failed war on drugs depends on the actions of our new leader. So good luck, and stay tuned to updates on how the new governor works to keep Virginia moving forward in cannabis reform and justice. Well, that's all for this special report. I'm Joe Parsons reporting with WPCM-TV's Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Until next time, stay lifted.
Coming up on Cannabis Coast to Coast News with Elena Pinto this week. All quiet on the federal front because the government is closed for business. That means no movement on safe banking, no movement on rescheduling, and now even the DOJ and the Supreme Court want some more time to deliberate over gun rights for cannabis consumers. Plus, reports of coercion and slimy tactics for signature collections coming out of Massachusetts, where the prohibitionist group SAM is trying to shut down the industry and now is eyeing the state of Maine. We'll talk with Chris Faraone from the Talking Joints Memo, who is always in the middle of everything in the Bay State.
Like I said, if it's such a great initiative, it's such a good idea, why do you have to lie to people to even get the signatures, let alone to get it to pass?
Plus, Massachusetts-based multi-state operator MaryMed is pulling out of the Missouri market, where they had been hired as a managed service consultant for over a year. And in Ohio, once again, a hemp ban was passed by the House, and it goes nowhere when it reaches the Senate. And now it goes back to committee. Ohio lobbyist Tim Johnson from CannabisSafetyFirst.com tries to explain what is going on at the Columbus State House.
As typical in Ohio, the GOP leadership has found a way again, and this is their words from the GOP president of Ohio, is to delay, deny, and deceive the voter so that you can get out of them what you want.
It's the first week of November, and the Commonwealth of Virginia will be electing its first female governor. One is more in favor of adult use than the other. Joe Parsons will have that for us. All that and international reports, including a story on the Columbian president urging President Trump to legalize cannabis with a post on X. No kidding. All that and more on Cannabis Coast to Coast News with Elena Pinto next.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cannabis Coast to Coast News, WPCM TV's weekly coverage of the fight to end cannabis prohibition here in the United States and now around the world. I'm Elena Pinto. It's been over a month now since the federal government closed, and the impasse continues. Democrats blame the Republicans, and the Republicans blame the Democrats. And the impact of the shutdown is being felt in every aspect of society. Even talk or rumors about rescheduling cannabis has slowed down, while advocacy lobbyists are all looking for help and support from consumers and the industry. The only hint at any changes at the federal level actually come from non-action from the U.S. Supreme Court. That group has agreed to hear arguments about the Second Amendment rights to bear arms and if cannabis consumers should be allowed to own firearms. But now the Supreme Court is asking for more time before they deliver a judgment. That request for delay is actually being interpreted as a positive sign for rescheduling, since the Plant Medicines Control and potential move off Schedule 1 could change their eventual decision. The biggest move this week in Washington, D.C. came from the Federal Reserve when they cut interest rates by 0.25%. So what impact will that have on the flow of capital to the cannabis industry? Probably not much on the business side, but consumers appreciate any reduction in interest rates. This week, our executive producer, Jimmy Young, had an opportunity to talk with the CEO of fund Canna, Adam Stettner. His company has facilitated over $425 million in fundings for cannabis-related businesses since their inception 4 years ago. Here's Jimmy and Adam.
Thanks, Elena. Yes, we're so proud to have the CEO of Fund Canna. His name is Adam Stettner with us, and this particular interview will have double duty. We'll actually run it on our own network at WPCMTV.com, but also for our Cannabis Coast to Coast News show. And Adam, thank you so much for joining us here today. You have created one of the most successful lending arms in the cannabis industry. And for that, you deserve a prize, because this is not an easy detail at all. And yet you've managed to deliver over, actually, I'd like to get that number. I hear reports 300, I hear 400 million. How many millions of dollars of loans have you pumped into the cannabis industry since you started Fund Canna?
Well, Jimmy, first, thank you for having us on the show. I appreciate it. And then to answer your question directly, we've underwritten about 5,000 transactions. We funded about 3,500 transactions. We've approved close to $500 million, 500 million, and clients have drawn about $225 million so far.
Gotcha. And of course, I did some research, so I saw varying reports. So I figured I'd go right to the source, and I hope you're comfortable with that. Let's start with the news of the week. The Fed dropped the interest rates by 0.25%. What impact will that have on your business?
None. And the reason I say that, I certainly don't mean it dismissively, but I deal with the same thing that the rest of this industry deals with. And the fact that we are all, this is the crazy part. And I think your listeners will be interested to hear. I'm in a Class A office building, a regular office. I'm surrounded by medical practice and you name it. There is no cannabis anywhere nearby, but we are treated as an institution no differently than the plant-touching clients we service.
So Fund Canna is just another CRB or MRB, a cannabis-related business, just like all of us in the industry. You know, you can't deal or bank with traditional banks. You have to find credit unions or pay sometimes exorbitant fees. Now, that doesn't matter whether you're $1 million business or a much smaller one. The rest of that interview is now available in its entirety on WPCMTV.com. That's our website, our homepage, and it will also be released on our YouTube channel later this week on Thursday. For now, let's go back to Cannabis Coast to Coast News and Elena Pinto.
One other note from our nation's capital. 39 attorney generals from different states wrote a letter to Congress asking for more clarity on the federal definition of exactly what hemp is. You remember that the Farm Bill of 2018 created a legal definition of 0.3% THC in dry weight. But as you all know, that has only created more confusion. It also started a $30 billion plus industry that is unregulated and federally legal. And now you have some states banning all THC infused products. Others allow these products to be sold openly at gas stations, convenience stores, and smoke shops. It's no wonder the state attorney generals are frustrated by the so-called loophole. And now that letter is urging Congress to ban all THC-infused products. But since the Congress is shut down, don't you wonder if anyone is home in the Capitol to open it? Well, Kerry HInkle is our hemp reporter, and he has more on this latest effort to fix the confusion from a bill that was passed 7 years ago. Here's Kerry.
I'm Kerry HInkle with Bayou City Hemp out of Houston, Texas, and I'm back again with another hemp report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This week, we turn our attention to Washington, D.C., where Congressman Andy Harris and Senator Mitch McConnell are continuing to debate how to handle hemp products in the agriculture appropriations bill. You may remember in July, Senator Rand Paul held up the entire package over hemp, and it sounds like now the entire government shutdown could be held up over the issue of hemp. Now, what's changed is that on Tuesday, Rand Paul held a webinar with thousands of participants from the hemp industry in which he urged everyone to get involved and mentioned that he's having negotiations right now with Andy Harris on what the hemp language could look like in the bill, and that both sides really are not interested in moving on their position. And when both principals in DC do not want to move on an issue, this is when the public gets involved. And so through social media campaigns like #HempHelps and almost every single hemp industry organization urging their members to get involved, I checked in with friends on Monday in Capitol Hill and things were quiet. Those same people on Thursday said, yes, no, we've received hundreds of emails and calls now. And a little inside baseball here, every week, DC offices will compile a report for the member, and it says we have X amount of calls or emails over each issue, and top 3 or 5 usually get reported to the boss. Starting Monday, hemp was not going to be one of those issues. Friday, it's clear that in many offices come Monday, they will be talking about, wait, what's going on with this issue? Wait, we're trying to ban hemp in one paragraph and a 1,000-page bill, and the entire government could remain shut down over this? What are we doing? Is similar conversations I had with friends on Capitol Hill this week. So vibes were low on Monday, much higher on Friday in the hemp industry, but still, as of October 31st, there has been no deal struck, although it's clear pressure is ramping to strip that language. Again, for Cannabis Coast to Coast News and Bayou City Hemp, I'm Kerry HInkle. I'll see you again next week.
Now, as we start our state reports, we start in Ohio, where last week the House there passed a bill to ban those THC-infused products. And now that bill went to the Senate this week, where they shut it down until next year, and the issue returns to committee. State lobbyist and the head of CannabisSafetyFirst.com, Tim Johnson, has some insight on what is going on in Ohio.
As typical in Ohio, the GOP leadership has found a way again, and this is their words from the GOP president of Ohio, is to delay, deny, and deceive the voter so that you can get out of them what you want. He said it several times. It is what it is. So we've seen that same thing happen here last week. And it's still discriminatory by saying the hemp industry can do cannabinoids that has THC in it, but the cannabis industry can't. And if you're going to put it into, I think it's 4305 semicolon 1-03, I believe, in the revised code, liquor statute says that you can't sell marijuana or have marijuana in a liquor licensed facility in Ohio. Well, when you put a hemp THC drink in there, that's marijuana. You can call it hemp. It's still THC. So why can't then, if that's true, can I go out on the patio where they're smoking cigars and tobacco and smoke a hemp joint that's 0.3%, right, or even smoke a joint?
Who out on that patio is going to have a measuring device to see, okay, which one was 0.3% dry weight in the beginning? And
yeah,
as usual, the people making the decisions and the laws really don't understand how the plant works. And
They don't.
This is where one of the biggest things they should just take a botany course or talk to any of the growers so that they understand that THC, it works. In fact, watch the video that President Trump put out there, because it was the best explanation of how the endocannabinoid system works in our bodies that I have seen. It was the first time I looked at something and I go, now that's a public service announcement, right?
He finally got one thing right. In all his political pandering, he got one good commercial out.
And again, he didn't do it other than to post it. Let's just make sure we understand that. Okay.
He's not going to do that. Let's be real.
Exactly. And Fox picked it up. Oh, what a shock, right? And again, I get it. Okay. It still always boils down to educating the people that are making our laws. They think they're doing the right thing based on their own experience, their own knowledge, as opposed to listening to their constituents, because that takes effort, Tim.
It does. And we've always focused on educational awareness as a key. It's a phrase I've used for the 10, 11 years I've been at the State House.
And with more from Ohio, here's Christina Brisson.
I'm Christina Brisson with Over the Top Renovations with your weekly Ohio Cannabis Report with Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I would say surprise, surprise, but we all know it isn't one, that the Senate did not agree on the House revised bill. It was their own original Senate Bill 56, which involves intoxicating hemp products, a little language about where the tax revenue is going to go, as well as revisions to the cannabis law. However, it was a 32-0 vote. And on top of that, the Franklin County Court has actually decided to extend the ban against Mike DeWine's executive order prohibiting the sale of intoxicating hemp products. The next hearing is on December 2nd. That was a little bit of a surprise, I think, some of us. And notice we have two battles going on that if they could come to an agreement, we wouldn't have all of our forces and resources put into the two different places. We could have an agreement and just be done with both battles. But they've got everything together and not wanting to play nice. So hopefully there's more to come. I am Christina Brisson with your weekly Ohio Cannabis Report with Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
There are two state governor races that will be decided this week. One is in New Jersey, where Republican Jack Citronelli is being challenged by Democrat Mikey Sherrill, who is leading in the polls. In Virginia, there is a distinct difference between the two-party candidates. Both are women, and one will emerge as the first female governor of Virginia. The Democrat is Abigail Spanberger, and the Republican is the current Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears. Over the past few weeks, Joe Parsons has been doing a great job of reporting on the differences between the two, and he will have two reports for us this week. One today in a preview and a special report to follow on Wednesday when we release the C Block. So here's Joe.
I'm Joe Parsons with the Virginia Cannabis Connection by Higher Education's Coffee Talk, sponsored by 97.5 3WB, and reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Big marijuana has joined in Virginia's hot hemp war. Jushi Holdings Incorporated claimed that DoorDash, Total Wine, and other defendants have engaged in a, quote, deliberate and coordinated scheme to erode Virginia's heavily regulated medical cannabis market by selling intoxicating cannabinoid products that run afoul of state law, end quote. They also said that, quote, disguised as lawful hemp, these products are, in reality, potent and dangerous forms of marijuana, offered without the mandatory safeguards, regulations, and testing or oversight that the Commonwealth imposes on licensed cannabis operators such as ourselves. They accused DoorDash, who partnered with Total Wine to develop THC-infused beverages and gummies, of deception and attempting to flood the marketplace with unregulated illegal cannabis products. Virginia has already imposed a ban in 2023 on hemp-derived products and has recently been actively enforcing these regulations. Jushi is asking for a jury trial to settle the issue and is seeking over $80 million from the defendants over the claimed economic injury from the alleged unfair competitive advantage. This may be perceived as another blow to the adult use and a big win for big out-of-state players for the medical market. However, it remains to be seen how the lawsuit will be received by consumers and advocates who may view the legal challenge as an attempt to stamp out competition by eliminating a source for the adult use consumers with no other access for non-medical patients. Well, that's going to do it for this week from Higher Education's Coffee Talk, sponsored by 97.5 3WB in Charlottesville, and reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Joe Parsons. Until next time, stay lifted.
In California this week, the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors repealed a controversial cannabis tax with a unanimous vote of 4-0. This tax has been part of that rich cultivation area since voters actually approved it in 2016. And at the time, there was hope that the cannabis industry would grow exponentially during the so-called green rush. Instead, it crashed. This tax was based on the square footage of cultivation sites, but the market correction that has crushed the California cannabis industry made the implementation of this tax unfair. That's why the Board of Supervisors reversed what the voters had put in place when everyone thought the green rush was going to continue. According to county reports, there was $11 million of unpaid tax debt, and enforcement costs would have exceeded the revenue the tax had brought in. Well, now let's check in with Michigan, a state that is dealing with the fallout over their own tax increase. Here's Amie Carter from the Michigan Weedsters, and her report is sponsored by Wally's Wonder World of handmade, customizable humidors.
This is mold on wheat. This is mold on weed. And this is what this Wonderworld plant is supposed to look like. Do you want to make sure this never happens to your precious flower? Check out the handmade humidors by Fenton, Michigan craftsman Gregory Johnson. Each humidor can hold 1 ounce of your stash, and it comes with a Boveda humidity pack. You care about your flower, so protect it inside a humidor made with American-grown maple, cherry, or sapele wood. Check out their website at wallyswonderworld.com. There you'll find the famous award-winning Hakuna Matata No Worries Humidor. You'll also find a variety of humidors with different designs. They even customize accessories like doobie tubes, grinders, and even a classic roach clip from the 70s. Treat your stash with class with a custom-made, handmade humidor from wallyswonderworld.com, and never worry about moldy weed again.
I'm Amie Carter with Michigan Weedsters, and here's your Michigan report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Michigan has been buzzing with cannabis activity these past few weeks, covering everything from new safety laws to what people are reaching for when they can't sleep. Lawmakers in Lansing are zeroing in on 2 major areas of enforcement. First, they want to give the CRA the power to instantly suspend licenses, allowing them to quickly shut down shady dispensaries. On the other side, they're looking to crank up penalties for illegal growers and tighten rules on how much cannabis Michiganders can possess. Still, some advocates remain firmly opposed to sending anyone to prison over cannabis offenses. Safety is a huge concern this week as officials report that cigarettes, joints, and vapes are sparking a troubling number of deadly fires. These smoking materials are reportedly accounting for up to 1/4 of fatal blazes this year. The danger is especially pronounced when people are smoking while also using medical oxygen. A medical dispenser in Ypsilanti, Budbridge LLC, is facing heat for allegedly giving away large amounts of cannabis concentrate under a fake customer name. Regulators flagged transactions involving nearly 2,000 grams of concentrate product that was reportedly handed out to customers for free. This massive giveaway allegedly used multiple profiles under the fake name Chris Peterson, a practice which led to an inaccurate tracking and may have resulted in customers exceeding the legal limit for possession. On the legislative front, state lawmakers are pushing for a new requirement to educate students and parents on the dangers of vaping, tobacco, and cannabis products. The hope is that these educational efforts will curb the use among those under 21. Finally, a University of Michigan study found a surprising trend. More than 1 in 5 young adults are reaching for weed or booze to help them sleep. Researchers caution that while this habit might provide initial relief, it could ultimately end up messing with long-term sleep quality. That is it for this week. I am Amie Carter with Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
The Michigan Report is sponsored by wallyswonderworld.com.
That'll do it for the A block or first section of our news show this week. But when we come back, we'll take a look at the international markets and later a movement in Massachusetts to collect ballot signatures that will pose a question repealing many of the gains in adult use in the Bay State and their savory methods of collecting those signatures to get access to the ballot. Cannabis Coast to Coast News continues after.
Counting Buds has grown into Buds Group, the same award-winning quality, now with more service offerings. Buds Group, your best buds in the biz.
Looking for PR that over-delivers on expectations? At Maverick Public Relations, they pair big agency experience with personalized attention. From launching award-winning brands to securing top-tier media hits, their data-driven communications team helps visionary leaders and entrepreneurs rise above the media noise. Maverick PR is responsive, collaborative, and relentless about results and ROI. Visit themaverickpr.com and make headlines together.
If you want to
Welcome back to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This is the B Block, or second section of our news. I'm Elena Pinto. If you've been following international news this week, you know the U.S. Armed Forces have targeted alleged drug boats off the California coast. President Trump is justifying the destruction of those boats as a means to discourage the importation of drugs like fentanyl to this country. At the same time, this week, the president of Colombia posted on X that Trump should legalize cannabis to combat the illicit drug trade. Gustavo Petro is the president of Colombia, and he continued to encourage the president to create a regulatory framework in this country and allow for the importation of international exports of cannabis. President Petro went on to post on X, quote, "Colombia actually provides the money and the deaths in the struggle, while the U.S. provides the consumption. Consumption in the U.S. and the growing consumption in Europe are responsible for 300,000 murders in Colombia and 1 million deaths in Latin America," unquote. According to the translation, hard to believe that two leaders of countries are communicating through social media, but that's the world we live in now. So let's find out what's going on in the UK with Dave Barton.
I'm Dave Barton from Thermidor with your UK Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. International patient advocacy group We the Patients has announced it will hold its first event in the UK during Medical Cannabis Month. The event, being held on the 7th November at the Charter House in the Barbican in London, is being organised in collaboration with UK patient advocacy group Patient Can, and will feature a roster of high-profile speakers, as well as patients sharing their own stories. Attendees can expect insights on cannabis-based chronic pain treatments, as well as shared learning and practical workshops. The event is the latest in a series of European events organised by We the Patients. Another was held in Switzerland last month, reflecting its mission to reshape the conversation around medical cannabis through patient-led advocacy. That's all for this week's UK Report. I'm Dave Barton from Thermidor, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
Back here in the U.S., the collection of signatures continues here in the Bay State of Massachusetts by the so-called Sensible Cannabis Group, who are trying to change a ballot question and get that approved. It would dramatically change the existing adult use market in the state. Needless to say, the industry is not too pleased with the initiative that is being organized and backed by SAM, the prohibitionists led by Dr. Kevin Sabet, who started the Smart Approaches to Marijuana group. Curtis Emery is off this week, but executive producer Jimmy Young caught up with Chris Faraone from the Talking Joints Memo to talk about this signature effort and their tactics.
Thanks, Elena. Curtis Emery, our regular Massachusetts reporter, is off this week, so I went to the bullpen, as they say in sports, and brought in Chris Faraone, the right-hander from Binge, the Boston independent nonprofit journalism group, and the Talking Joints Memo, because he wrote something last week that really upset me. Not what you wrote, Chris, but hearing about the unsavory tactics of the signature gathering by the prohibitionist group that's trying to do that here in Massachusetts. What do you know about their tactics?
Well, it was so egregious that I didn't believe it at first, or I thought my friend was mistaken. And then a source contacted me, and what I started to hear about a week and a half ago now, it's been 10 days of getting after this story. was that there were people collecting signatures, as people do for ballot initiatives in Massachusetts. We currently have 40 that the Attorney General said can, if enough signatures are collected, can advance to the next stage and potentially eventually to the ballot in 2026. 2 of those measures are related to cannabis. They basically, as you know, get rid of adult use dispensaries. And what I was told was by my first source was a friend who said that they were told, sign this, it's so that kids stop going to jail for marijuana. And, in the moment, I guess she didn't stop to think, they're not, it's already legalized. And she signed it along with a couple other initiative petitions that this guy was collecting. This is down in Hanover on the South Shore of Massachusetts. And I marinated on it for a day. I looked up some things, and we'd already done reporting on who's behind this ballot initiative. It is people related to the Massachusetts Republican Party and to prohibitionist forces that actually just successfully defeated ballot question in favor of psychedelics, of regulating psychedelics in Massachusetts. So I'm familiar with them, and also from past prohibitionist exercises they've been involved with. So I went to see myself. And so now I think it's a week ago from my first standout. I'm like one of you TV reporters, in this parking lot of the supermarket. And I didn't ambush the guy. I did approach him. In Massachusetts, we're not allowed to just record people without their consent, and that's pretty strict, even in public. I didn't want to push it, but I took my notes. I listened to him pitch other people, and the pitch I got was very similar. And I went and reported that, and people were like, "Oh my God, I've seen the same thing." A lot of people, even people in the industry, said they've been fooled into signing this, into signing something. Some actually said it was a straight up bait and switch. People are now reporting to me, several people, that they were asked to sign something related to low income housing and then given a form to sign for the other one. I mean, that is even worse. So it's all different forms. I'll shut up in a second, but I went back out Monday, 2 days later. So earlier this week. And wow, I've encountered 2 guys in Weymouth, Massachusetts, and a different 2 people, and they were basically just telling people whatever they wanted to hear. So for me, it was like a total half truth, which is they're putting marijuana back on the ballot so the people can decide. Decide what we decided. And the other guy, I followed him around. He was telling this one guy, well, people are getting ounces, bringing them to other states. It's a real problem. So this is just, like I said, if it's such a great initiative, it's such a good idea, why do you have to lie to people to even get the signatures, let alone to get it to pass? So I've been saying from day one, this is not something to mess around with. Look at what happened with the psychedelics measure. I know it's different, but these people clearly, they were out talking smack last week. One of the organizers behind the ballot initiative, or their public mouth was out telling, I think, Cannabis Business Times, that they're on track to collect 100,000, and they need 75,000. And I'll tell you, Jimmy, they better collect 100,000. They better collect 200,000 if they're doing it like this, because every one of those is going to get challenged.
One more note from Massachusetts. MaryMed, a multi-state operator based here in the Bay State, is pulling out of the Missouri market. They had been under a management contract in the state, but no longer. MaryMed still operates 13 dispensaries in 6 other states, including Illinois, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware. Next up, the Arizona Report with Karen Black, who has a story about another recall in her state. Here's Karen.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Arizona's cannabis industry is facing some serious quality control concerns. The state health department issued voluntary recalls on multiple cannabis products after testing discovered mold and lead contamination. Sweet O's Scrooge flower from Mint Cannabis is being pulled from shelves for aspergillus mold, while wedding cake products from Cookies Tempe are also effective, and Saint's Bruce Banner flower from a Tucson dispensary exceeded safe lead levels. The state says no illnesses have been reported, but if you've purchased any of these strains, you're advised to return them for a refund or destroy them. On a much more encouraging note, Arizona is making national headlines with the groundbreaking psilocybin study. The state has approved the first ever FDA-authorized trial using whole psilocybin mushrooms, not synthetic versions, to treat PTSD in first responders and military veterans. 24 participants, 8 police officers, 8 firefighters, and 8 vets, will receive 30 milligrams of psilocybin from whole mushrooms grown right here at the Scottsdale Research Institute. The trial starts next month, funded by $5 million the governor authorized back in 2023. Meanwhile, Arizona's ongoing hemp battle is getting national attention. Attorney General Chris Mays just joined 38 other state AGs calling on Congress to ban intoxicating hemp-derived products like Delta-8 and Delta-10 nationwide. It's a coordinated push that could impact Arizona's own legal showdown. The Arizona Court of Appeals is scheduled to hear arguments on November 4th about whether the state can legally restrict these hemp products to licensed cannabis dispensaries only. Stay tuned because we'll have a full report on what happens with that ruling next week. Arizona's edibles market is getting a jolt of innovation. 2 new cannabis products just hit dispensaries. Hyphen, a modular vape pod system from Verano Holdings with interchangeable pods and temperature control, and Juicy Jellies, rapid onset cannabis infused gelatin shots that kick in within 5 to 15 minutes. Juicy Jelly's official launch was at the Marijuana Industry Trade Association's monthly networking event in Tempe last week, where the brand emphasized equity and next-generation ownership in the cannabis space. That's all for this week's Arizona Report. I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
If you follow the news out of Florida, you know the state with the largest medical cannabis patient registrations has a governor, Ron DeSantis, who dislikes the smell and the fact that he has to deal with it in his own state. Now, in Cape Coral, there's a THC-infused social consumption lounge that has opened with food and other alcoholic beverages. The seed and bean market is already open in Fort Myers and Venice, but it's the one in Cape Coral that is already creating a buzz, and it's not open until December. According to the co-founder, Cole Peacock, quote, says, "The food is organic, it's all natural. We don't fry food in oil, but with an air fryer. There's breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and we sell legal hemp-derived THC products that feature low-grade THC and CBD-only products. Or you can infuse your foods with these cannabinoids," unquote. Sounds like it will be a pretty popular destination in Florida. But next up, let's check in with Tina Tasaka in Nevada.
I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies and Iconic Representation, and this is the Nevada and Tribal Nations Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. The numbers are in from the CCB, and in October we saw 4 less cultivation licenses, 3 less production licenses, and 1 less distribution license. Since May of 2023, Nevada has lost 34 cultivation licenses. It's a clear sign of how competitive and tough the market can be. The Nevada Cannabis Compliance Board conducted an undercover sting where an underage buyer successfully purchased marijuana products at 2 dispensaries, including Zenleaf in North Las Vegas. The CCB confirmed the violations through video evidence and voted unanimously to impose disciplinary action, recommending fines of up to $20,000 for each dispensary involved. The CCB recently approved 2 new Las Vegas cannabis consumption lounges. Sunflower Compassionate Company, led by social equity owner Rachel Lee and partners Celeste Rodriguez and Dr. Sharita Howard, will focus on healing and medicine. The second, Infinity Lounge, is a social equity independent venue offering cannabis cocktails, entertainment, and a membership experience. Opening dates have not been officially released. Cannabis Compliance Board Chair Andrea Guzman Frolic has announced her run for Nevada Attorney General as a Republican. A Reno attorney with experience on multiple state commissions, she faces GOP contender Danny Tarkanian, while Democrats Zach Conine and Nicole Cannizzaro are also in the race. The primary is set for June 9th, 2026. That's it for the Nevada highlights and tribal nations. I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies and Iconic Representation for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
Missouri is another state in the Midwest that has a new Attorney General, Catherine Hanaway. She became the first female appointed to that position by their governor, Mike Kehoe. Now she wants to target THC-infused beverages in her state. Missouri has some of the most liberal regulations for THC and CBD products. Other than generating tax revenue, that market has been operating smoothly. In Nebraska this week, there was a state-approved license for a Native American tribe. While Nebraskans for medical marijuana continues to battle with regulators and lawmakers in and out of court, the state continues to make it as difficult as possible for their voter-approved initiative, which passed with over 70% of the vote. And now the state has finally approved a license for a vertically integrated cannabis operation to the Omaha tribe. John Cartier, the tribe's general counsel, shared that he wants the territory to, quote, stand as a district contrast to the dysfunction and show that the will of the voters is being respected, at least on the Omaha reservation, unquote. Nebraska's neighbor Oklahoma is getting down to the deadline on their signature drive to get the adult use question on the ballot. Here's Kimmie Cannabis with an update.
I am Kimmie Cannabis from Canna Talk About It with your Oklahoma Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. On October 27th, OMMA launched its new Med Portal program, and many patient recommendation businesses say it's been anything but smooth. Jamie Jackson of Sweet Leaf Wellness reported she could log in for about an hour before being locked out. She said she even tried through a patient's phone, got to the photo upload stage, then received an error code and was kicked off. She's since gotten no response to emails or messages from OMMA. Beginning November 1st, 2025, per Senate Bill 518, all medical marijuana product labels must include a new warning that reads, "It is illegal to drive a motor vehicle while under the influence of marijuana or marijuana products." Also starting November 1st, deli-style flower sales are officially over. Oklahoma is now fully pre-packaged. Many businesses were forced to sell remaining bulk inventory at rock-bottom prices in an attempt to make up on any losses. And on that same day, over 300 commercial medical marijuana registrations went inactive with OBNDD, including 233 dispensaries and 95 growers and processors. Michelle Cagle confirmed those numbers from the OBNDD website, saying complete, timely applications were the gold standard for survival. November 1st was widely known as the OBN and Fire Marshal shutdown. And finally, November 4th is the deadline to turn in signatures for adult use cannabis, State Question 837. Fingers crossed we got the numbers we needed. That's it from Canna Talk About It and Oklahoma with your Cannabis Coast to Coast report. I am Kimmie Cannabis. Peace, love, and all that good stuff.
Can you imagine a state that has a legal medical use program that has generated $33 million in collected taxes and hasn't done anything with that money? Well, you don't have to imagine that anymore because West Virginia is in that exact situation. That state's first medical dispensary opened in 2021, and state law is already in place that should guide where those funds should be allocated. That fund is supposed to be used to create research programs, as well as help out with substance abuse disorders and law enforcement training. The most surprising thing is the response from West Virginia officials, including a spokesperson for the state treasurer's office, who stated that, quote, "The money will remain unused until the federal government reschedules the plant medicine," unquote. The $34 million is deposited into a credit union since the state did not have any other legal place to collect and bank it, thanks to its federally illegal status. Even a state senator did not know that the money is sitting in a credit union unused. And now people in that state have found out about this misappropriation of funds, or more accurately, non-use of the funds, and none are very happy. It will be worth watching, though, what happens in West Virginia. Now let's check in on the publicly traded stocks in the cannabis space. Here's our man who is high on Wall Street. Here's Doug Miller.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street. This week's Cannabis Stock Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Verano Holdings and Vireo Growth, formerly Goodness Growth Holdings, have settled their massive $860 million lawsuit after Verano walked away from a 2022 acquisition deal. Back in early 2022, when cannabis stocks were blazing near record highs, Verano agreed to buy Vireo in an all-stock deal worth $413 million, a move that would have opened the doors to New York and Maryland's emerging adult use markets. But when cannabis valuations crashed, Verano got what Vireo called buyer's remorse and backed out, triggering years of litigation. The fallout didn't stop there. The failed merger also sparked federal insider trading charges against a former Verano executive, a case still pending with the SEC. So let's look at Verano's stock chart. It's trading around $1.36 and it's setting up the run, but watch for those dips. It's going to pull back a little bit and then lock in those profits and trade smart. And that's this week's Cannabis Stock Report. Reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News, I'm Doug Miller.
That'll do it for the B block, or second section of Cannabis Coast to Coast News. And in our final block, we will share the story of another legal adult use New England state that is petitioning for a rollback of laws that are backed by prohibitionists. Cannabis Coast to Coast News will be back after this.
Called Cannabis Coast to Coast News with the very talented Elena Pinto. Now, it's all about learning how to talk, to speak, to communicate like a broadcaster. It's epic. So join my community that I'm calling the Forever Young.
Welcome back to the C Block, or the final section of Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Elena Pinto. There are two New England states that are both trying to make changes to their existing cannabis laws. The state of New Hampshire just won't give up trying to change their existing minimal medicinal program. And this week, a House committee passed an adult use law, but it is already being targeted by the Republican Governor Kelly and the Republican Senate, where they have made it clear that will never happen in the so-called live free or die state. Right next door is the state of Maine, where a petition has been filed to roll back the adult use legalization market, including a ban on home grow. Maine has always supported the small craft grower and kept big MSOs out of that state. The same prohibitionists who tried to stop the legalization of the plant medicine a few years ago in Maine are resurrecting the fight to undo the will of the people. So cannabis continues to be the pawn fueling a divide between the two political parties. Neither initiative is expected to pass, but advocates are starting to see a pattern of elected officials working to reverse the progress of ending prohibition. Well, now let's hear from our resident grower in Illinois. Here's Mark Allen, the Chicago Clone Guy.
What's up, everybody? Chicago Clone Guy here, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News, just outside of Chicago, Illinois. Always lots of stuff going on here in the Chicagoland area and my facility. We're going to do a little overview for you of what I've been doing for the past week. Some of the few things here. One of the many things I did this week was set up and purchase this 4-tier clone rack, as you see, this blue and orange clone rack. There's going to be over 4,000 clones on that rack when it's all said and done. Next thing you're going to see right here is my first row of lights plus a partial second row of lights. Those I connected all together, installed, powered up, and are ready to go for the transplant that will be coming up soon. There's a new Senate bill introduced that amends the Industrial Hemp Act that pretty much would say that any cannabinoid hemp product that's being sold cannot be mixed with caffeine. Simply put, so a hemp drink or hemp product, you just can't mix it with caffeine. That's what they want to do. Other proposals against hemp, I'm going to say the war against drugs. They want to put an age limit on hemp, which I guess I'm not really intoxicating hemp, which is 21 or over. So they want to make the age 21 or over to buy intoxicating hemp products, which I guess I'm not too upset about. But then they want to add to that a $2 tax per item per hemp product. So you got to be 21, and then they want to put a $2 tax on it. What else do they do that with in the state? You know what I mean? Products. It's insane, but that's what they're trying to amend it to do. That's okay. It is what it is here. Oh, more news, legislative proposals that they also talked this year about. Right now in Illinois, you can grow 5 plants if you have a medical card holder. They're talking about increasing that to 12 plants. So that's still on the table. We'll see what happens. But anyways, that sums up the news for Chicagoland area. I'm Mark Allen, the Chicago Clone Guy, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Thanks for tuning in.
There are plenty of states like West Virginia who are sitting on millions of dollars in collected taxes from their cannabis sales and doing nothing with it. It even took states like Massachusetts a few years to figure out what to do with the tax money, but then there are states like Maryland who are using those funds to train the workforce. Here's Christopher Bright with the details of that program in his state.
I'm Christopher Bright from The Enlightened Voice. Welcome to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'll be bringing you the latest cannabis headlines from Maryland. Maryland's Department of Labor is boosting Canna workforce with new funding through its EARN program. The grant trains unemployed and underemployed Marylanders for high-demand jobs across the state's cannabis industry, cultivation, processing, and dispensary operations. The program boosts a 94% job placement rate. Founder and CEO Dr. Kathleen Kennedy says the money ensures continued training for better paying careers. Starting in 2026, Canna Workforce will launch specialized courses for cannabis lab technicians, meeting the surge in the need for testing and quality assurance experts. Kennedy, a biotech workforce specialist, started in the organization in 2023 alongside Roth, CEO of Cannabiz MD. The two met in the University of Maryland's Medical Cannabis Graduate Program, where Coheen Roth now teaches. Coheen Roth, Vice President of Education, says the training transforms lives, building confidence and opening paths to become economic stability. The funding will fuel expanded outreach and enrollment in 2026, prioritizing equitable access to Maryland's regulated cannabis market. And now we have our content creator of the week. I would like to shine a spotlight on Chef Sticks, the 5-time award-winning cannabis chef infusing your world with bold, elevated flavors. From triumphant CBD cook-off dishes to bespoken private dinners via his cooking genie, he blends the culinary artistry with cannabis creativity for meals that spark your joy. Dive into his captivating Instagram post at Chef Sticks, where every bite he asks, "Did you eat yet?" And that's all for this week's of Maryland Cannabis Report. I'm Christopher Bright, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
Here's a pop quiz for you. Do you know the definition of the phrase California sober? Basically, it means giving up alcohol and using cannabis for your intoxicating activities. And now that movement is taking hold in Colorado. There is a bit of a twist, though, because the movement does include another plant medicine. It's psilocybin. The group behind the movement is a nonprofit called MS Terrios Miracles, whose motto is everything in moderation, including moderation. Denver resident Marissa Poppins is the executive director of the 9-year-old organization, and she calls herself Colorado Sober since she uses cannabis and a microdose of psilocybin to manage her chronic pain caused by her MS. Here's a quote. Weed and mushrooms have a lot less next day negative effects than alcohol. I'm new to the term, but I think people are starting to realize what it means on their own. It's a version of a natural high, unquote. Next up, a familiar story in all cannabis markets, the mislabeling of test results. This time it's in Colorado, and Jenny Germano has more from her state.
I am Jenny Germano with ICS Consulting. This is the Colorado Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. In Colorado, a recent study is raising new concerns about how accurately cannabis products are being labeled. Researchers from the Institute of Cannabis Research and MedPharm Research carried out what they say is the first large-scale review of cannabis flower and concentrate products sold across the state. Their team purchased 277 items from 52 dispensaries in 19 counties, including 178 flower samples and 99 concentrates. On average, flower tested around 21% THC, while concentrates came in higher, averaging about 71%, with some exceeding 80%. Here's the big finding. Nearly half of the flower products did not meet Colorado's requirement that THC potency be within 15% of what's printed on the label. Concentrates, however, were far more consistent, with only a few showing significant mismatches. Why is this important for consumers and especially for medical patients? We have inaccurate THC labels, which can lead to taking more or less than intended. The researchers noted that flower is naturally harder to test because it varies by bud, while concentrates are more uniform and easier to measure. The researchers are calling for improved testing standards and greater transparency in product labeling. They also plan to expand their work to include edibles, aiming to help regulators, producers, and consumers build more trust in our state, Colorado. For the cannabis industry and consumers, these findings underscore the importance of trusting your source and understanding that labeling may not always match reality. And this will be really interesting to see how this is going to turn out. With the Colorado Marijuana Enforcement Division is doing some independent testing for the next 30 days across the state of Colorado, and they're pulling samples from the shelf. I reported on this a couple weeks ago and how everything is going to line up with what the state of Colorado is doing for their own independent testing that they're teaming up with the Colorado Department of Health and Environment. Stay tuned. I'm going to be following this story and tracking this. I am Jenny Germano with ICS Consulting, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
In Minnesota, the nation's newest legal adult use state is slowing opening up. A handful of the indigenous tribes in that state have been the first to open for the adult use business. Access to the legal tested products has been slow because of the lack of product grown in the state in advance of opening day. Needless to say, it has caused some frustration for those who have worked so hard to get started. Alicia Bellamy has more from her state.
I'm Alicia Bellamy for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This is your Minnesota report and your Halloween report. I'm here at Lucky Strange with Bear and Philly. They are the first non-tribal cannabis dispensary in the Twin Cities. Today, we would like to talk a little bit about what would you have changed in opening your dispensary.
Well, I think for licensing, what we would have changed is the way that the rollout happened. We strongly believe that growers, manufacturers, distributing companies, transportation, delivery services should have been licensed first, and we should have had a maintainable amount of flower to go out to people rather than flooding the market with a whole bunch of retail licenses and everyone feeling the effect from that. I feel like the rollout happened incorrect.
And what have you had to do to pivot from the difficult rollout?
The pivot. Well, we have been just kind of overcoming the obstacle with the current shop and the current loyal customers that we have. It's amazing that we have been able to keep going and keep, effective hemp products in the store that the customers keep coming back, and we grow a little bit each time, but it is it's getting to the breaking point of not being able to get the products everyone looks for.
And that is the state of Minnesota. This is Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Alicia Bellamy.
Usually we leave you with a light story to end the news show, but in this case, we are going to show you another video that a government organization is running in traditional media. Even though no tax dollars were used to produce this video, it comes during the week that the president ordered boats destroyed that were supposedly carrying fentanyl, a really dangerous drug, off the West Coast. Now the DEA is releasing a scary public service announcement warning of using cannabis from illegal sources in the legacy market. Prohibitionists are trying to continue the trend that cannabis can be laced with fentanyl. Perhaps the most disturbing part of this video is that people under the legal age of 21 are being used to drill home the message.
Best birthday party ever! Well, except for the weed. Turns out, it was laced with fentanyl. And a birthday I'll never forget, because it was my last.
Patient is a cardiac arrest. Just one mistake, and you're out of the game. Forever.
Taking fentanyl is like playing Russian roulette. Just a few grains can kill you.
I had to pull an all-nighter. So I took the pill my roommate gave me. I swore it'd be the last time. It was.
I was immediately addicted to fentanyl, exactly like the drug dealers wanted. My skin turned blue, I aged rapidly, my organs painfully deteriorated. Then I died, alone.
Fentanyl kills.
Join President Trump's fight to end the fentanyl crisis.
It's just another reason why the plant should be tested and controlled as a substance, not just for the purity of the substance itself, but for the bad human actors out there who want to take advantage of the lack of education and lace it with stuff that is scary and could kill you. And that's why we end every program with the same line. It's a whole new world of weed out there. Consume it responsibly. And now we add, only use tested cannabis from licensed stores. That'll do it for Cannabis Coast to Coast this week. I'm Elena Pinto, and we'll see you next time. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast News, WPCM TV's weekly production of the fight to end cannabis prohibition in this country and around the world. I'm Elena Pinto.
Delivering the nation's only TV news-style program. Since June 2021, WPCM TV has racked up over 1.3 million views with 17 million impressions and picked up over 16,000 subscribers on YouTube alone. For